Hello guys, welcome back. So this is Forex weekly analysis for Monday 22nd through Friday 26th April 2024, and as usual I start with the dollar index because the dollar index gives us an idea of what price will do across every other currency regardless of what you are trading. So this week, last week when price was here, I told you that I would expect higher price movements for price to expand to the upside, trying to attack this buy side and then eventually this buy side here. And of course we saw a little bit of range on our dollar this past week, although not an explosive range, a little movements on the dollar index to the upside, expansion. And since we have three candles after this, we have candles 1, candles 2 and 3, a fair value gap was formed on the weekly time frame. So we have a fair value gap here. This week my bias for the dollar index is still bullish. So what I'm expecting price to do this week is for price to open and drop down a bit, maybe down to this fair value gap, anywhere around this fair value gap on this weekly time frame, and then expand to the upside. If for any reason we open this coming week and then we close down below this fair value gap, we close below this fair value gap, that is my contingency plan. Then we'll be expecting lower prices. Lower prices will be a contingency plan, but currently I favor the upside on dollar index. I'm expecting price to open, retrace, trade into this fair value gap, and then expand to the upside. For our daily time frame, for the dollar index daily time frame. So here's the daily chart for the dollar index, and this is the weekly buy side as indicated. And for our daily time frame, I would love to see price trade back down. On the daily time frame, we have a fair value gap on this daily time frame. Let me quickly remove this. Sorry. We have a fair value gap on the daily time frame. So when we open, I would like to see price dig into somewhere inside this daily time frame. Remember, we have the same part where we have the weekly fair value gap. It's where we have the daily fair value gap as well. So I'd like to see price dig into this daily fair value gap, maybe week through this weekly fair value gap, and then expand to the upside. So even on my daily charts, I would expect higher prices on the dollar index. Now, if for any reason we open this coming week and then for our daily time frame we see any of the days close below this fair value gap. If we see any of the days close below, remember this is a fair value gap on the daily time frame. This high and this is the low, one pass. So this is a fair value gap. So if we see a candle closing below this fair value gap, then we can expect lower prices. But as far as price remain above this fair value gap, we should be expecting higher prices. If price should trade into this fair value gap and wick through it but does not close below this fair value gap, then we are still expecting higher prices, which I favor currently. So I expect to see price open, trade into this area or this area maximum, and then run through the buy side. So that's for dollar index. For our euro dollar, remember, whatever the dollar index, whatever price it gives us, we have the opposite in most cases on all other asset class, including euro dollar. So last week we had this price action, and I said I was expecting lower prices for the euro dollar, and that was the case actually, although we came back on Friday and closed above, but we had lower prices down to this part. Now this week I'm expecting the euro dollar to expand to the downside. How price close does not actually matter, but I'm expecting price to expand to the downside because this sell side on our weekly time frame is the target, is the lowest hanging fruit target. So how do we realize that? First, when we open, I would like to see price open, move up a bit. Maximum, it should wick into this fair value gap on the weekly time frame and go down. If it doesn't get tier 2, fine, that's good. If I better, so I like to see price open, move up a bit, and then come back down to attack the sell side. We might not see this range just this week. It might take a couple of weeks, but here is the ultimate draw on liquidity on the weekly time frame. For a daily, for the daily time frame, I still expect price to reach this low, this sell side on the weekly time frame. So what I would like to see on the daily time frame is for price to open. I like to see price open this week, trade up. Remember, this is a fair value gap on the daily time frame. We traded into the fair value gap, but we didn't really close it up on this end. We didn't close it up in this end, so we might see price opening, coming in to close it up, and then wick into the weekly fair value gap and then expand to the downside. So that's that for euro dollar. So for euro dollar, I favor the downside. I would only change my bias if on the daily time frame we see price closing, not trading above. If we see price candles closing above this daily fair value gap, then of course it will turn to an inverted fair value gap, and then we'll see price coming back and it acting as a support to move to the upside. So as far as price did not close above this fair value gap, I am bearish. If price should wick through it, through the fair value gap, and close inside the fair value gap, we are still bearish. So that's that for euro dollar. Pound dollar, weekly time frame. So for the pound dollar, last week, like I mentioned, we had price here, and I said I was expecting lower prices because this low is the ultimate target, and we saw the expansion to the downside. Yeah, it will take a couple of weeks to get to this sell side, but this is the draw on liquidity. Here is where we are targeting. So coming off this week, I would not expect price to open and come back to this fair value gap. We have a fair value gap on the weekly time frame that has been created. This is some sort of range. Can it happen? Yes, it can. We can come all the way up here and then reject from it and trade lower, but this is some sort of high range. So I expect price to open, trade up a little, and then rally down, but ultimately price shouldn't go above this fair value gap on a weekly time frame. So on our daily time frame, this is the same fair value gap we saw on the weekly time frame. This here is a fair value gap on the daily time frame. Yeah, so we've had so much expansion on pound dollar here. We've had so much expansion here. So I would expect price to open. Let's say create a little fair value gap for Monday. We have this low here. Monday's price action, I'm not expecting it to fill up to this point, so it will create a fair value gap. That's what I'm expecting. Tuesday and Wednesday, I expect a higher prices, and then we'll see it rejecting from this other block here to the downside. Here's the ultimate target. So that's that for pound dollar. And then finally for Aussie dollar. For Aussie dollar, on weekly time frame, last week, although I didn't do that publicly, but for myself, I made an analysis and I was expecting lower prices, and of course we saw price expanding to the downside. the target is this low. The target is this low. Yes, this low of the week. So this week as well, I'm expecting lower prices. Remember, any pair that is paired against the dollar that is coming as a quote currency would come off as the opposite of what the dollar index is doing. So if the dollar index is expanding to the upside, we'll be expecting lower prices on Aussie dollar as well. Coupled with the fact that we have a sell side here, which we are expanding to try to raid the sell side. So daily time frame Aussie dollar. Okay, so we still have the sell side on our daily time frame, and then ultimately I would like to see price open, trade a bit above. The next fair value gap we have after here is here. This is quite far, so I'm expecting price to open, trade above. I wouldn't expect price to close above this fair value gap. So this is a daily time frame fair value gap. I would not expect price to close above it, so price might open, trade above, it might come back to this fair value gap, but I would not want to see the daily candle closing above this fair value gap. And once that happens, once price trades above, it might wick through it, and then I would like to see expansion of the daily candles to the downside. I won't want to see price close. I won't want to see price close above this daily fair value gap, because once price closes above it, then we might be seeing a short-term reversal to the upside, using this as premium and this as discount, and we might see price expanding up to this other end. That will be a contingency plan, but originally my bias for Aussie dollar is for price to expand to the downside this week. So I hope you find this insightful. I hope you can use this properly, and what you should do with this is that in your trading this week, you should be looking for prices that supports this weekly bias for you to catch a good range, a good number of pips. It does not mean you cannot trade the opposite direction. You can, but those should be short-term trades between 10, 15, 20, 30 pips max, no more than that, because definitely the main expansion is to the downside. I hope you find this insightful, and until I talk to you next week, hopefully, I wish you good luck and good trading.